we have one of our favorite guests on today, Gary Arnold, and now you are at Progress Center now.
True. I'm the program director for Progress Center.
Can you give us an idea what some of the programs are at Progress Center?
Sure. Progress Center, I used to work for Access Living. Progress Center and Access Living are both called Centers for Independent Living. There's 22 Centers for Independent Living around Illinois. Each one has a different geographic area to cover, and each one is responsible for providing services that give people with disabilities tools to be independent. Progress Center opened up in 1988, so this year will be the 30th anniversary of Progress Center. It's very exciting to start on a big anniversary year like that. That will be fun. There's just fewer than 20 people working there, and most of those are program staff. And so we have programs within the Home Services Department, so we get funding from the state of Illinois through the Home Services program to provide personal assistance services. So personal assistants are people who come into the home who help out with day-to-day activities that help people be independent. So help with getting out of bed, getting dressed, cooking, cleaning, things like that. So we have someone on staff who helps build a pool of qualified personal assistants, and then when people with disabilities contact us in search of a personal assistant, we can work with them and help them find one. We have a program that's called the Stepping Stones program. That's a peer support and independent living training program for people who want to move out of nursing homes. So we go in, do a training in the nursing homes, helps prepare them for that transition to be independent in the community. We have an advocacy department, so people working on policy issues, like more affordable housing, more modifications for housing, like pushing legislation that will support people with disabilities or fighting against legislation that will hurt people with disabilities. We run an internship program for people in search of employment, the idea being that they'll get some on-the-job experience at Progress Center and then be ready to go out and find permanent employment afterwards. We have a deaf advocate on staff who her job is to work one-on-one with people who are deaf or hard of hearing on whatever issue it may be that they might need some support on. A lot of times that has to do with advocating for better communication, like when going to the doctor's office or when going to the Department of Motor Vehicles, things like that. And then we have information referral, like all independent living centers do, someone dedicated to really just fielding all sorts of different phone calls and inquiries from people who come in off the street, helping them find resources that might be helpful to them and their independence. I think that about covers it.
And you have a branch office, don't you, in Blue Island?
True, good point. And in that Blue Island office, which is a south suburb, there's actually a program, someone on staff doing specific outreach to the Latino community, so that we can be sure to be able to provide services and supports to Latinos with disabilities as well. So there are about 3 or 4 people working in the Blue Island office, and then around 16 people working in the Forest Park office.
Now, one of the reasons we have this interview is there was a large women's march, and we just had an interview with Susan Arup, who said that there's a big convergence between women's issues and disability issues. Now, I have something here. This is a left-wing magazine, but they have an article here, and this is one of the few times we've ever seen this. ADAPT, an article on ADAPT, and the issues by ADAPT. And I want to get your reaction to something that I'm going to read right here. The morning last June, Senate Republicans worked feverishly to gut the Affordable Care Act. About 60 people, many of them in wheelchairs, entered the Russell Senate office building by separate doors so as not to attract attention from the Capitol Police. They converged on the office of Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and proceeded to raise hell. No cuts to Medicaid. Save our liberty, the protesters chanted. Some got out of their chairs and lay down on the floor. The day's news reports were filled with shocking pictures of police officers carrying many disabled activists, some of them handcuffed with zip ties. Organized by the disability rights group ADAPT, the die-in at McConnell's office, as well as dozens of similar actions around the spring and summer at congressional offices from Fairbanks, Alaska to Orlando, Florida, pulled back the curtain on the GOP's plan to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Deep cuts in Medicare buried in the legislation would have particularly devastated disabled Americans, since the program helps many pay for at-home services, thus keeping them out of institutions. If we lose our health care, people with disabilities in particular will begin to die because we won't have access to doctors and to the services that support them and keep us alive and independent. Could you have a little reaction to that?
Well, I think I just want to say congratulations to National ADAPT for their leadership, for taking the lead on fighting back against threats to health care and to the Affordable Care Act. And congratulations to them for making The Nation magazine. That's a real badge of honor. And I think what happened was monumental because, as I think I just said, I mean, they set the stage. That they were the first ones, at least in the media, visibly in the media, to really fight back in a very strong way against the health care bills that were being put forward in the House and Senate, mostly obviously by Republican leadership. And they did it in such a dramatic way on day one that they got the attention, and that attention led to this coalition and groups working in unison together, and it was together that the progressive community and grassroots activists across the country were able to resist and to repel against these healthcare proposals that were put forward. And many look at ADAPT as you know, without them, this would not have happened. We would not have been victorious in fighting in defeating the healthcare bills. So it's quite amazing. And I think MoveOn.org, I mean, that's a huge organizing group because of that action. Their attention, MoveOn.org's attention was earned, and their support was earned, and so that led to this like great coalition together throughout the spring and summer.
Yeah, this is, now I watch MSNBC and CNN a lot, and as a cameraman, I filmed a lot of demonstrations by ADAPT when people being put in, dragged off. I remember people crawling up the steps in Nashville at a demonstration there.
Yeah.
And it never seems to make the mainstream media. I don't want to sound like Trump at all, but it's true. They just sort of ignore it. The Kardashians are coming to town or something, you know, and the disability movement just doesn't get the publicity. But just lately, I've seen the Rachel Maddow show. I saw people being dragged out, people in wheelchairs, people chanting on TV, and then CNN, Rachel Maddow, some of the other people. Yeah,
it was actually the evening, the column you just read alludes to a day in June, I think it was, when Senator McConnell's office was occupied, and it was the evening, on the evening broadcast of Rachel Maddow's show, that she ran a long piece about ADAPT, and that was groundbreaking, I thought. I'd never seen anything that long and that detailed in such a, you know, some people might not consider MSNBC mainstream, but that has a wide progressive audience. And, and that was the lead story that day, and it got significant coverage. So you're right, it's hard to get media, no matter who you are, and oftentimes disability issues are siloed. They aren't seen as part of mainstream issues like healthcare, education, housing, and employment, and so they're kind of packaged on their own. and as a result, don't get the same coverage as other issues. And so for the kind of coverage, at least temporarily, that was received, it was pretty significant.
Well, people don't realize that people that have no disability, they're in good health or everything else, they're this far away from being in the disability community, because that's the difference that putting your foot on the brake may be. If you put it on this sooner, you wouldn't hit somebody.
Right, yeah. Today, actually, the day we're filming is January 23rd. It's considered to be Ed Roberts Day. Ed Roberts was one of the pioneers of the independent living movement, and I was looking at a quote from him. I don't know, I remember the exact quote, but it had something to the effect of, disability does not discriminate. That means anybody at any point in their lives can be a member, can become a member of the disability community, exactly as you're saying, and you're absolutely right. You know, it's going to impact all of us at one point in our lives, you know, and chances are, yeah, it will impact everyone who's watching today. It might impact them directly or a family member, because it could, you know, affect anyone. You never know what's going to happen.
Right. One of my granddaughters is just now trying to apply for a job. She has the DiGeorge syndrome, and she's 23 years old, so this would be her first job if she gets it. I've got a grandson with autistic? Autistic, right?
Okay.
He's got autism, right?
Okay, yeah.
And this is what's happening. And I'm getting old. It's like the situation where the priest was assigned to a leper colony, and he was there for 20 years. Then one day he got up and said, "We lepers," you know, and he had gotten leprosy himself. There.
Yeah. Okay.
And I noticed I've been working with the disability community, but I didn't really think of myself as a disabled person. My sister had this, and now all of a sudden I could see everything a lot clearer.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know.
Can we go back for a minute? You mentioned the Women's March at the
Right,
beginning.
that's what I want to talk.
I just want to say, I appreciate the efforts of the organizers. Did a very good job, it appears, this year in terms of accessibility and inclusion of people with disabilities. I know there was a large group working on it. Rachel Arfa, an attorney over at Equip for Equality, I think was one of the leads on the Access group, planning for Access. They had speakers with disabilities, and they had a section. For example, I was able to entering and getting to the stage and getting to a space where I could easily see the stage was very simple. They had a section cordoned off for people with disabilities, and so it was very nice. So it looks like they did a wonderful job, and congratulations also just to everyone who turned out and organized for it, because it looks like turnout was even higher this year than last year. Last year I think it was estimated at 250,000, and this year they had 350,000. So
350,000?
That's amazing. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. From what I've heard and from what I've read. Yeah.
Now, where is the disability issues and the issues in the women marches? Where do they converge?
Well, for one thing, I think that you look at healthcare, and healthcare for women. Healthcare for anyone is extremely important, but for women with disabilities, they're often kind of disregarded in terms of healthcare. Like they'll go to a clinic or visit their doctor, and the doctor or whoever is treating them or checking up on them will only treat their disability, won't do standard checkup things that are done for all women, like weighing, like mammograms and things like that. A lot of that has to do with the accessibility of clinics and hospitals, and the fact that not all of them can accommodate people with disabilities, but also it has to do with just ignorance around disability. A lot of times women aren't asked questions about birth control and their sexual activity, because it's just assumed that because they have a disability that they're not engaging in any sexual activity or interested in engaging or being active in it. And so a lot of times, things go untreated, unrecognized, and services aren't provided for women with disabilities the way they are for non-disabled people. That's just one example.
Yeah, so mostly right now the Trump administration, and it seems to be headed away from the Americans with Disability Act. They're sabotaging it in some ways. And the Affordable Care Act is being, there's underhanded ways of getting it cut back and everything. So it's really going to hurt people with disability.
I'm not sure it's so underhanded the way with the tax bill repealing of the individual mandate. Yeah. I think he's trying to tell you something. Yeah, and then the other threat right now is HR 620, which is, I forget the name of it, but that is a bill that will really dismantle part of the protections we have in the Americans with Disabilities Act. It'll make it much more difficult for people like you and me to register a complaint in terms of physical access at a store or at a business. If they're not accessible to us, it'll be much more difficult for us to seek any remedy.
Yeah, I've heard about that. So we've got to be on guard, and I think that this is the year, not 2018. There's going to be a major election coming up in November, primaries and everything. Everybody has to get out and work and register and get voting and everything.
Right.
Well, Gary, I wish we had more time.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Great. So good to have you on here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. And Will Cowing for Adapt Productions, and we'll see you again. Now, this is a major year, and get out there, because if you don't get out there, things can happen that you aren't going to be happy with. So let's get out and register and vote. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Will. Thanks.